Hey, welcome. I'm going to give 10 seconds before we start so that we can get the Facebook Live started. Make sure that this is already being recorded, but it'll also be available on Facebook Live. So you can check it out there later on if you are missing it live. All right. So hello, welcome. My name is Linnea Bond. I am the Health and Environmental Education Director for Physicians for Social Responsibility, Pennsylvania. Thank you so much for joining us at the Just Transition. Three former oil and gas workers talk about environmental justice. And we are so lucky with the folks that we have here today to speak with us. But really quickly before we start, I'm going to take a pause because we lost someone this morning from our community in the PSRPA community. Julie Becker, one of our board members, passed this morning. And I just want to really briefly give a moment of gratitude rather than silence because she refused to be silent. She founded the Women's Health and Environmental Network in 1997 to address the links between the environment and cancer. Went on to develop meaningful and impactful programs such as Nature by Nature, based on theory and research which indicated that time spent in nature improved children's overall health and well-being. When later merged with PSRPA, establishing an environmental health division, which is now the primary focus of our work. So thank you so much to Julie Becker for her incredible work as a physician and as a leader within this space. And I'm going to bring us to our three incredible panelists. Before we begin, I'm going to introduce them with their bios. We have Bilal Motley, a filmmaker, actor, and screenwriter hailing from Chester, Pennsylvania. His films include Midnight Oil, which chronicles the explosion of the area's largest oil refinery from his perspective as a steelworker, and Trash and Burn, a documentary on the fight against trash incineration in his hometown. His work has been spotlighted by well-known media outlets such as Variety, CNN, and the Philadelphia Inquirer. As a member of the Society of Environmental Journalists, Motley leads film workshops designed to empower journalists and young people to craft powerful documentaries about climate change. And we have Gwendolyn Jones, the founder and president of Climate Conversation Brazoria County, which advocates for and educates the surrounding community about environmental justice. The granddaughter of the founder of the area's first school for Black children, Jones has worked in multiple facilities near her home of Freeport, Texas, originally a thriving Black community called the Negro Reservation. She was forced to fight eminent domain being used by the Port of Freeport to drive out the original Black and Brown Indigenous community in order to expand port industries, and was drawn into the fight for environmental justice through her fight for her own property. As a mother of two and grandmother, Jones has taken a strong stand against industries which have advertised themselves as a good neighbor, but which destroy the climate and community's health. And finally, James Hyatt. As a third-generation oil and gas worker with more than a decade of firsthand experience in the industry, James understands the tough choices many workers face, trying to make a living while dealing with the impacts these industries have on health and the environment. Born and raised in Lake Charles, Louisiana, his deep connection to the community inspired him to seek a better way forward. In 2023, he founded For a Better Bayou, a nonprofit focused on Southwest Louisiana, helping Southwest Louisiana shift away from extraction-based industries to a more sustainable, community-focused economy. So we have an incredible collection of folks here today. I am just so grateful for y'all being here and personal friends. So I'm delighted you're here. So I'm going to start with a question. So if you would please briefly describe your history working in the industry and what you have experienced or observed that led you to become an environmental justice advocate. Who wants to, Bilal, you want to get started?
Yes.
All
Hi,
right, we're going to hear
everyone.
from all you guys, so.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for this webinar. Thanks for PSR and everyone for joining this evening, wherever you are in the country. Yes, I started at the Sunoco. At the time, it was the Sunoco Oil Refinery in South Philadelphia. This is 2006, and I was a steel worker. I worked at the bio plant and the wastewater treatment facility, and it was a special place. It changed my life. this oil refinery. You know, like financially, it gave me, I felt a sense of purpose and just that connection you have with other workers. It's unlike any other thing that I've experienced, and I still haven't had any experiences like that since then. So yeah, like we would longest continually run refinery, I think, in the world at the time. And yeah, we were doing great things. But then one morning, two, 2009 in June, I had an hour left in my shift. The refinery exploded. It was on a hydrofluoric acid unit. We called it 433, and a small little piece of pipe, uh, you know exploded, and then different reactions happened, and it was devastating, and I had to watch my coworkers. Number one, it was dangerous. We had to respond to it. I was a manager by this time. It was like my 13th year, and I had to put my fire gear on and respond to it, and it was scary, it was terrifying, and you just worried about your fellow workers. But somehow no one got hurt through the heroics of control board operator who didn't never wanted to be named, but she's incredible. And yeah, we survived, but the aftermath is we all lost our jobs. I was held on as a caretaker, one of the few people left to just make sure things are still running right, but I slowly watch everybody lose their jobs. And then one day my brother called me and said, "Why aren't you filming this?" Like, I was trying to be a screenwriter. I was writing screenplays. I wrote a screenplay about the refinery that kind of mirrored what happened. And I just picked up my cell phone instead of waiting on Hollywood, and I just started to document what happened and my coworkers and their experiences. And then that's when I met Philly Thrive, the amazing fence line community group in South Philadelphia that have been fighting against the refinery for years. And honestly, to be honest with you, I never, you'd be surprised. I was surprised myself at what I was blind to. You know what I mean? Because I was making good money. You know what I mean? But these people look just like the people I grew up with in Chester, Pennsylvania, which is 10 miles south from Philadelphia. So yeah, working at that refinery in South Philly exploded, but then it was hard. All my friends had displaced around the world. I got friends in, all throughout Europe, Saudi Arabia, throughout this country to leave their families just to make that same money. It's hard to make the same money in this industry. And so yeah, that's my experiences. I think about it. The place is flat now. It was a staple in Philadelphia. When you're on the Platte Bridge, you pass the airport, and it's nothing. It's nothing there. They're putting warehouses there. This company out of Chicago. So yeah, I miss the people there. And yeah, that's what we did there, and that was my experiences. And I try to capture that through film and try to show all sides, not just us, the workers, this industry that we needed to sustain our families, but also what effect did this have on the community. And I do the same thing in Chester, Pennsylvania. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just add an addendum that that Philly Thrive, that community is still working on this transition from that facility to a better a situation that doesn't harm them, and that's an ongoing challenge as they're trying to redevelop that land. Um, so if you're interested in learning more about that, people should head to learn about Philly Thrive.
Mhm.
Yeah, James, did you want to tell us about your background?
Yeah, thank you for that, and Bilal. Thank you that so much of that resonated. I come from, my grandfather was a pipeline. They laid pipeline. He retired from that company. My dad worked at one of the refineries here in Southwest Louisiana. Retired from there. I was never going to work at the refinery. He would come home smelling like the plant, and my plan was to never do that. I actually moved away. We moved to New York City for 5 years, but my wife's family and my family are all here. And so we moved home, and wouldn't you know it, and I didn't have a degree, the best paying job, um, and I was able to get my foot in the door as a contract operator I worked on the docks, loading and unloading ships and barges, and eventually worked in the tank farm, climbing these massive tanks, engaging and sampling um, on these floating roof tanks. A lot of people don't understand, but if you've ever been to a refinery and you see these massive tanks, these 40, 50-foot tanks, most of the time, if you can't see the roof, that means it's actually floating. It's floating on the product, mostly light ends like gasoline or naphtha or toluene, and someone has to climb up there and get the gauge to basically stick a gauge tape into the product and find out how much is actually there. There are automatic ways to do it, but you have to verify. And some of that camaraderie that you spoke about, like I mean, we work this Canadian shift, is what they call it, where you work 4 days on, you get 7 days off, you come back, you work 4 nights. You are with your shift for 12 hours at a time. And so you end up being bonded with these folks. I mean, on your days off when everybody else is working, your crew is off. And so if you want to go fishing, you go fishing with the people you work with. And it becomes I mean, you're very tight knit. And so, there's a lot of good there. But at the same time, I'm thinking about all the folks I know who waited. They put in their 30 or 40 years at the plant, and they retired, and then within a year they came down with a cancer or some illness that is directly related to their exposure to toxic chemicals, benzene and formaldehyde and dioxins and furans and PCBs and all of these things that make up the hydrocarbons that make up the energy that we are currently using. And I also was blind to the impacts to the community, to the people around us. I mean, we had fires. I mean, even now, the plants are still operating. I don't work there anymore, but on Facebook groups, there'll be people talk. What was that boom? Did you hear that? Did you feel that? My walls shook, the window shook, on a regular occasion. If you don't live in one of these areas, you wouldn't think this is normal, because it should not be normal. The impacts not only to people's health, but also to the environment. We have a seafood advisory on this river that I live on, the Calcasieu River, from decades and decades of corporations just straight up polluting with no accountability whatsoever. And what I want to say most importantly is that exactly what you said, Bilal. We are so blind to the impacts of what we are doing by condition, by the system that we live in. This idea that I've got to get mine. We all have a cost of living we have to meet. We all have to pay these bills because the system that we are living in. But if we can zoom out just a bit and understand that our participation collectively can change things, that us coming together in a way that is beyond just I got to take care of mine. To understand that or as the Bible says, that we're going to love our neighbors. If we can really understand the actual cost of a continued dependency on fossil fuels and the dependency that we have that has brought us to this place. When I learned about places like Mossville, which is here, I didn't learn that growing up. I learned that in the last 10 years. And I've really learned it in the last several years after starting For Better Bayou and getting to know, these decade-long fights that have gone on where the corporations have taken people's land, drove people out, either by force or just by the inability to actually continue living next to such toxic polluters. I think one point is that it doesn't have to be this way, and when you learn better, and when you're able to come from a place of love and a heart-centered place to understand that each life is precious. My life is no more, is not more precious than yours. All of us, this gift of life that we have for however long we get to be on this planet, and is precious. And some people, those who live alongside these facilities, or all the infrastructure connected to it, suffer a premature death and disease because of our continued dependency. And when I'm talking against continued build out, a lot of times workers will think, my friends especially, will think that I'm talking directly to them, like they wear their identity as they are the oil and gas. I understand we all have to make a living, right? But even the folks who still work there need help understanding that the price has been way too high, and these companies have not been accountable and have not paid their fair share. And I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thanks, James. And you brought up something that I'm really excited for Gwendolyn maybe to touch on as well, which is the land stuff. And Gwen, when I spoke to you, you talked a lot about the what the conditions are like inside the plant, which is a thing that like I think most of us don't know. But then also this theme of the relationship of these corporations to land, and then private ownership and eminent domain, which when I spoke to you, was struck by because I had heard the same thing in Pennsylvania. So to go from Pennsylvania, hearing people talk about it, to the Gulf South and people giving the same other side of the playbook. But I'll let you speak when, if you could tell us about your experiences within the industry.
My experience of industry, it really started in high school, because Dow was the plant that everybody talked about. You know, Midland came to Texas, and Freeport, because I was born and raised in Freeport, Texas. And so anyway, when we graduated in high school, Dow was advertised where you could go to a vocational program and you could work half a day at the plant and you could work half a day and go to school half a day. So really, when we got out of school, we was able to get a job at Dow, but I didn't want to work. I went to Bradford Junior College. So after I had 2 years of college, then I went to work at the plant. But at the plant, when I worked there, I started out in maintenance. And then from maintenance, I went to lab technician. And I went back to college, took some more classes to become a lab technician. So anyway, from lab technician, then we had the explosions, we had the fires, we had all of that. But you blind, like you said, you think that it's no big thing, because every day they talk about safety. Every day you have to do something in safety. You have a test, you have safety meetings first thing in the morning. It was safety, safety, safety. But then I left there, and then I went to Texas City. And from Texas City, I went there as a lab technician because the pay was better. But then I moved from there and I worked in safety. And I said, I want to work also in operations so I could learn how the plant operate. And that's when things started. I started seeing more, whereas the plant not runs safely. It's all like you don't get all the full story of what happened. It'd be a lot of incidents that's happened, and they transparency is not there. They're more concerned about their safety record than what they're concerned about safety. It's always production, money, profit over people. And I was even there when they had the explosion in 2005. BP had the explosion, and I was there then. And but from my experience, when I started looking back and started finding out, take it forward, when the port wanted to purchase our land, which was next to the east end, that property been in our family, we lived there for 100 years. So I was going to retire right there. And when they wanted to take the land, that's when I found out the land belonged to the sulfur plant. Well, all of this stuff started coming back to me regarding the health of my parents and my aunties and uncles. And I started looking at the health issues, and I realized the ground we lived on belongs to the sulfur plant. It was already toxic. So we lived on that property for over 100 years. And when you think about property that you live on for over 100 years, and I start thinking about when I go to the doctor say, what kind of illness on your mother's side and your father's side? And they just don't want your mother, father, your aunties, your uncles, anybody in your bloodstream, they want to know. And I started thinking that because it was in the bloodstream of my grandparents back in the 1920s, then today what we have in the neighborhood, we have people that's constantly dying. We have babies being born with cancer, with asthma. I couldn't breathe when I was born. You know, I was a little girl and I still couldn't breathe. And my mother, I remember taking her to the fire department just to put her on the breathing machine. My daddy had heart problems. My aunt is them breathing. It was one thing, then it's cancer. Never, all these diseases. And it's more and more diseases. And they build it more and more dialysis center instead of us being healthier. We are dying. That's what we're doing. We are dying down here. And they act like they're oblivious to the situation. So when I do talk to people, and people, like I told them, I've been in the plant. And just like you, But you know, it's a reality when we think about our loved ones that came home with stuff all over their body. That my daddy came home with chemicals all over his body, and we dipping all that stuff. We touching with our hands, no gloves, nothing. You know, that is how I got into this here because we are dying, and I need to. I'm doing my best to raise the alarm and to talk to people regarding what is happening to us at these plants.
Thank you. Yeah, and if I should say that Gwen, you and Bilal have done really awesome interviews with me that can be found on our YouTube page. If you're like, no, there's not enough, I need to hear more, and you do, you should go watch their interviews as well. So can you talk a little bit about what your work looks like now? And I also have another question, which is like, you know, listening to you, it seems like this is not the kind of thing, like, could a person say like, oh, could we just regulate it enough and then it would be okay, is like a question I have. And also, what does your work look like now? I mean, I have my own thoughts on that, but you guys are more expert than I am. So if you would,
I love the question about regulating. So currently, my latest film is about America's largest trash incinerator in my hometown of Chester, Pennsylvania, a town of 35,000 receiving trash from as far away as Puerto Rico and Canada. Think about that for a second. So it's regulated, and this is the problem. And I knew this working at the oil refinery, so I'm gonna tie this into each other. It's regulated. They're meeting their permit. They're not exceeding like barely at all. You know what I mean? But it's regulated like it's the only thing there on the industrial highway near Chester. But right there, we have an oil refinery in Marcus Hook, Pennsylvania, which is literally down the street. We have waste facilities. It's bad. There's the highway right there. You know what I mean? And but it's permitted as if it's the only thing there and there's nothing but grass and and wonder. It's no. But we did this at the refinery too. Like we were really conscientious at the refinery. I'll give them that. Like oh, we're under our permit, but okay, what's around it? But in Chester, it's really diabolical. It's polluting facility, polluting facility, polluting facility, but we're under our permit. You know what I mean? So the regulation, I think they need to consider and update how they, you know what I mean? Because they're just saying, hey, we're under our permit, we're good. You know what I mean? But there's a million other things around. And my small little hometown is being bombarded. You know what I mean?
don't stop it all. But I will say the DEP has a hearing on one of those facilities coming up on the 18th. If people want to attend that, we'll put it in the notes so people could join and they could say, don't permit this facility because you're not considering intersectional harms. But let me just add that. Please continue.
No, yeah, and thanks for adding that. And yeah, so what I'm doing now, you wouldn't be. I almost said you would be surprised. You'd be surprised if people don't know. Like there's people in my film about the trash incinerator. They lived across the street from this behemoth their whole life, and they had no idea. They thought it was a cookie. Honestly, I didn't know what it was growing up in Chester. You know what I mean? And when people pass it, the refinery when it was there in South Philly, leaving the airport, like, oh, there's some towers. Like people just don't know. So what I'm doing now, I'm just making people aware. I don't have all the answers, but I make people aware through film. Touring the country with my latest film. Just and you get a bunch of looks like, oh, I didn't know. Like, and it's heartbreaking, but then it's a little hope. Like, okay, you're just making people aware. Like we just spoke to all the like in my hometown of Chester, the Crozier Health System. It's our main place. Like we don't have many family doctors, like really any family doctors in Chester. So people go there, receive their care in the emergency department. I don't know where y'all live, like that's the same issue. And they've gone bankrupt. So, I've been showing this film in my own way, like to all the other health networks that, in the area. You're like, hey, Chester needs help, and this is what we're facing. And also I'm showing the film where Chester gets its trash. In Philadelphia, I know the contract was up soon. I don't know if they renewed or anything because we get trash from Philadelphia, New York. It's just, because all these cities say, oh, not in my backyard. Okay, that sounds incredible, but where is it going? You know what I mean? Because nobody's thinking about where it's going. And it's coming to my tiny little hometown outside of Philadelphia. So that's what I'm doing, just raising awareness. I don't have all the answers, but.
And you can watch Bilal's films there's links on your website. Is that right?
Yes, there's links on my website.
Put that in the show notes too,
Yeah,
as
yeah,
they say on the podcast.
yeah, and also
Uh,
you can just reach out to me if you want to watch it through my website. Yeah. Mhm.
Amazing. Yeah, Gwen, James.
Yeah, I'll go. You know, there's so many ways to take this. I think that, you know, regulation is in Louisiana is a fine, you know, idea, but it doesn't work. Every permit that is ever issued by your state regulatory agency is a permit to pollute, is a permit. This is the limit that we're going to say is allowable. That doesn't mean that it's safe. That the you know, the safe limit for benzene exposure, the safe limit for the amount of particulate matter you'll receive. If it was really safe, the regulatory apparatus in this state would have air and water monitors all over the place, and we would have the data that shows that these things should not be running at the levels that they are. But instead, in Southwest Louisiana, we have 3 air monitors to regulate over 20 plus petrochem and refineries and LNGs. There's not enough data. There's not enough data to say what they're actually emitting. And a lot of that is modeling. That's the other piece, is that the regulations are based upon models. And the computers can be, you know, very helpful, but also they can, if you don't have a way to gather the data that shows what is actually in the air and in the water, you end up with a river like the Calcasieu River that has a seafood advisory that tells you, if you're lucky, if you're feeling lucky, if you're not pregnant, if you're not a kid, if you're not elderly, you can eat 2 meals a month of half a pound of fish. In the place that is called Sportsman's Paradise, where there is an abundance, where the biodiversity is great, was great. And at the same time, what we've been doing over the past 3 years since we started doing this work has been advocating and trying to raise awareness about the harms caused by continued fossil fuel build out, specifically liquefied natural gas, which is obtained by fracking. We're hearing a lot here recently about, oh, we need more offshore leases and offshore to get to this oil and gas that's just offshore in the Gulf of Mexico. The ship has sailed on the Gulf of Mexico because it is cheaper and more profitable for these companies to frack in West Texas to get the oil and gas out of West Texas. That is what has happened to the offshore industry in Louisiana, is that seeking shareholder value, profit margins, increasing the amount of money we can make, these companies have gone to fracking, which is a whole other set of can of worms, where it devastates, you know, communities and land by fracking. And so I think all of this is intersectional. And I think you mentioned this cumulative impacts. None of us and none of these facilities exist on an island all by ourselves. We are interconnected and interdependent with other living systems. And the ways that we have been operating, we act as if human beings are the only thing on this planet. And that has been, you know, unfortunate. And we've seen such, you know, ecological collapse. Right now, while we're not able to quite say it with scientific certainty, we've seen the shrimp population coming up into our river and into the estuaries, where these shrimp and birds and fish and all of this, the nurseries for all of this life, has been greatly impacted because of the ship traffic, because of the noise, because of the pollution, because of the continued unfettered expansion of profit-making corporations. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I wouldn't be so, I guess, bitter about it, except that these corporations, to talk about regulation, these corporations don't even pay taxes. They are tax exempt. 3 of these LNG plants in Cameron Parish are tax exempt to the tune of $1 billion a year, in a place that in 2020 was hit by 2 Category 4 plus hurricanes within 6 weeks of each other. So it's damaging human health, ecological collapse. We're also seeing climate change impacts, not only here but to our friends in the global South. And at this, you know, at this juncture where there's enough information that these the big oil and big gas companies are continuing trying to flood with more false solutions like some kind of carbon capture or a way to introduce more fossil fuel infrastructure into communities that have not been on the fence line. And so, the one message that really resonates, I think, for me is that, what has happened in these places along the Gulf Coast, in places in Houston and Freeport, Corpus Christi, along the Mississippi River, in the Ohio River Valley, in Pennsylvania, is completely unacceptable at a time when we know better, when we know that and the pushback that we see is oh, what are we going to do about energy? What are we going to do about don't you enjoy that car you drive and the plastic that holds your milk and whatever else? All of that comes at a cost to human lives. It causes premature death and suffering. And PSR has the data that shows fracking, the compendium on fracking. And if we continue to drill, baby, drill, without actually being accountable to the people who are most directly impacted by this, then we're moving in the wrong direction. And this would be like a doomsday prophet, just like keep on talking about all the harms. There are solutions. Reduction, efficiency, energy transition. The problem is that the system is working fine for those who are controlling the levers, and it's difficult to help people see that the ways that we are living are not actually beneficial in the long term for any of us, because when it's hot outside, I like to have the AC on, right? And when it's so we had snow on the ground the other day in Southwest Louisiana. We had over 6 inches of snow on inauguration. Right after the inauguration on the 21st, we had 6 inches of snow. That's never happened in my life. I'm not saying I'm only 40 something years old, so it's not unheard of maybe, but to the swings, and it's also was 80 degrees today. So the swings and the imbalances in the climate, the workers are also experiencing this. I think the work that we're doing now, I'll sum it up with this. The work that we're doing now is helping people. I don't also have all the solutions, right? I think the solutions have to come from community, and we have to get a wide array, a diverse population together to speak to what the needs actually are. I mean, we can go back to knowing that we need shelter and food and community. Those are the 3 basic needs that we need as human beings. And a lot of this stuff that we think we need, we don't. And maybe reframing around that is helpful. I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thanks, James. Don't talk about solutions yet. That's our 3rd question. Just kidding. So Gwen, can you tell us a little more about what your work looks like now?
Ooh, it's so much. I don't know who said it, but when it was talking about Freeport is surrounded by, we may have like approximately 30 facilities. And then, it could be more. They all over the place. And when I was coming up, they was in our neighborhood. Now they're everywhere. And they surround. And I remember as a little girl when we used to go fishing with Mama Nursey on the corner, her and this other lady. I used to go get up early in the morning, go fishing with them. And we fish at the Brazos, which is right at the mouth of the Gulf, because that's where we live at, close next to, in front of the Brazos, and we could walk to the Gulf of Mexico. And I remember seeing dead fishes.
Wow.
And it had a black film over it. And I didn't realize exactly what was happening until really a couple of years ago, that the fishes was dead because they were throwing chemicals in the river. And so it was like a glow. And then I started thinking of all this here. And then when LNG came, they put a fence around the facility. You cannot see the facility at all, except for the top part, but you can't see the cars, you can't see the people. They must have a ground flare because you can't see the flare. Uh, they got it fenced off, and now they expanded, working on train 4. And the explosion they had, when they had that explosion, there was no alarm for about an hour or so. It was conflicting reports, but they did evacuate people during the explosion. They were driving their vehicles. It was a couple that was interviewed that did not evacuate it. They were sitting outside on the back of their truck. And it was chemicals that, like, balls of fire up in the air, just shooting out during the explosion. There was nothing from the city of Freeport. It was complete silence. And that's what we have been living with all our lives, living in Black, brown, indigenous community. As far as silence, it become normalized. For the windows to shake, for the glass to break out, it's normalized. And I think to make a change is the people have to become aware of it and to realize the side effects. When it comes to regulations, they always point at one another because there's so many. So you have to have special equipment in order to pinpoint who is polluting the air, even though we are in a cancer cluster area. According to EJ Screen, it's a cancer cluster area. But we have so much pollution, and you think about pollution over 100 years just saturated in them. I mean, I don't have the answers, but one thing I do know, it has to stop. I do feel like if there's a bad way of doing things or hazardous ways of doing things, there's a safe way of doing something. It may not be the way that might be more profitable. It might not be as speedy. You might have to make some sacrifices, and you might not be able to run that process. But there's a safe way where we could transform from these fracking in the ground, and then talk about carbon capture, which is a whole different story, but stop fracking and then go to something safer and environmental friendly. Because what the fracking is doing, it is, you've seen the ground shift. It's a town between Beaumont and Houston, and it was a sinkhole just filled right in there. And then I know in Houston, off of 610, it was the men's store. It was a big old sinkhole in the ground. And then I think about over in Swinney, where my daddy grew up, and they was fracking in front of the house. Big old sinkhole, you know, and all it's gonna do over time, because like James talked about, we have record heat. In the summertime, it's so hot when you open the door, it's like a sauna hit you in the face. It's hot. And then we had a warm winter until all of a sudden we had a cold spell to come in, and it snowed in Texas too. And people out there making snowmans, but the weather is so unpredictable. You could go from freezing temperature to record heating all in the same day. You have 3 seasons all in the same, all 4 seasons the same day. So I feel like, and then another thing is the smell. The smell is so bad, whereas it become normalized. For people that come down there, they smell it. But for us, it's natural. And so you cannot dispute this, you cannot dispute the smell. To me, to have the people is to have the people to fight. One thing, my girlfriend who just passed away, you talk about your friend, one girl, part of my organization, just passed away. And I was talking to her on the telephone, and in a matter of less than 20, 30 minutes, she had died. And one thing that she came up with is, and we worked in those plants, what is wealth without your health? It's nothing. The most precious thing is life. And to know that your children have a future, to these kids being born with diseases, you talk about the healthcare issue that exploded. It's nothing. We keep going at this rate because all they doing is expand the healthcare. They talk about emissions for your vehicles. They talk about carpooling. They talk about everything they talk about. Everyone else is polluting, but have they ever said one word regarding the plants, regarding the flares, regarding the chemicals that they're releasing in the air? Not one. And the monitors, what good is the monitors if we don't have the equipment? And on top of that, we have to educate our people in order to make sure that those monitors in place, make sure that we have the right equipment that we could use in order we want to file a complaint with the EPA or anyone. We have that documentation because they have traumatized us or made us so normalized to know that we always thought we were safe, but now all of a sudden you have this fear in you because you don't know what tomorrow holds. That's how unpredictable the weather is. That's how unpredictable the climate is. We had tornadoes. We never had tornadoes like this unless it was a hurricane. We had tornadoes that came through Angleton and shut it down. And that wasn't the Hurricane Bear. I mean, and then we had it back-to-back hurricanes. So disasters picking up. But guess what? Insurance companies are dropping us. So the price of houses going up. And today, steel is being put a 25% tariff on steel. So everything that's supposed to go up. And we, who used to be, this is not going to be a middle class. It's going to be the rich and the poor. Because you think about the people that had retired years ago, 20, 30 years ago, they can't survive based upon their income. But these plants, they're making billions of dollars. And when you go to Freeport, when you come through, you think, I mean, it looked dark, gloomy to me. But we should be looking like Dubai. We should have gold. It's much more like James talked about. They get tax abatement. They don't pay any taxes. The tax burden comes on the people. That's how oblivious we are to what's happening around us, that they don't pay any taxes, but they have the wealth. But we who trying to survive do not have the wealth, and we are paying the taxes, and we are struggling to survive.
Yes, ma'am. I'm gonna just ask the last question, which you're, welcome to continue speaking on because you guys are already, sort of there. But I just want to leave a little bit of time at the end if anybody has questions, and our lovely guests have said that they might stay a little bit over. So from your positions at the intersection of these communities of labor and impacted residents who live in communities that are impacted by this infrastructure, these communities are so often pitted against one another, right? Like you guys were talking about, it's not simple. And I think our politicians and the corporations who benefit from that separation also exacerbate, tell me if I'm wrong, but exacerbate those divisions. But I think also, as a person who doesn't come from either of those communities, I mean, I'm impacted on climate change, but like not maybe in the same way that people who live right next to an incinerator or a sulfur plant are. So what do we need to know about that we don't about each other community in order to support each other more? What do folks in labor need to understand about environmental justice? What do folks who are in environmental justice don't know about labor? How can these communities learn from and work together for the future we all want, including ensuring we all have healthy environment, a safe workplace, financial security, and a sustainable energy future?
Yeah. That's a great question. Yeah, I feel like, well, my experience at the South Philly refinery, I feel like the community, like there were some attempts, you know what I mean? But I don't know, I don't think it was that successful for people within the refinery to talk to people in the fence line community. But I don't think, I don't think the people in the refinery, I don't think a good enough job was done for that. Because I feel like it wasn't until, and you'll see this in the film I did about it, we don't talk. You know what I mean? Like we would come to work in our cars, you know what I mean, and do our 12-hour shift and then go home. I would Before I got involved, I would see the incredible group Philly Thrive outside the fence line, you know what I mean, like at the fence, protesting sometimes, you know what I mean, but I didn't know, you know what I mean, I wasn't connected to it. And I think there has to be a way to bridge that divide, because if you don't, once you get to know someone, we all want the same things. We want our kids to be safe. We want to, have, sustainable wages and things like that. We all want the same thing. I mean, we're all living under this, just because you live a few miles down the road, that doesn't mean you're exempt. There's no force field stopping this pollution from reaching you. And I think there was no empathy there. So when we would meet, when the people in the refinery met the people of the community, and I captured it on film, it was very contentious. It was very contentious. And so I don't think a good enough job on our end inside the refinery was to talk to people in the community and their concerns, because until I met them, I didn't have, and this is what I kicked myself for this. And from being honest, I didn't have the same, I separated it in my brain, you know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm doing a good job. I'm keeping this place safe. Like you compartmentalize. You start to think, oh, I'm doing a good job. We're all like, we were the best at what we did. We cared, but there wasn't a face to the community to me. You know what I mean? So I think there has to be ways to, bridge that divide, and where you're not just meeting in meetings when there's an issue, or it's too loud or the smell. Like, no, you need to do the work before that happens. You know what I mean? Like if they have input, like in Chester, they have input on a filter on top of the stack of this trash incinerator. You know what I'm saying? It shouldn't be in a meeting where the press is there and it's contentious, because nothing is productive at that point. There needs to be an effort. I think I know it's on the company. You know what I mean? The people in the community, people in my hometown, they don't got time to be doing all this. You know what I mean? They're just sacrificing their time. You know what I mean? It's hard enough living in Chester. And so what's all the people in the community like, no, you need to get out there. What are your concerns? Number one, should this be here? Like when the permitting is done and they have all these ribbon cuttings and it's going to bring jobs. Well, what happens with these incinerators? And I'm pretty sure it's the same down south with y'all. There's a ribbon cutting ceremony. Everybody takes a picture, but how many people really work there? There's like a couple hundred people at this incinerator. Maybe I remember last count was like maybe 10 from Chester. You know what I'm saying? But at the ribbon cutting, I guarantee I wasn't there. What they promised. You know what I mean? So it has to be more, outreach from the companies to the communities. But then even before that, should this even be here? Should this even be in this community? Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's such a good point. Should this even be here? And I think that's where we're at. And where, I have so many of my friends are engineers or operators or, still working at these plants. And just today, one of these companies announced there's going to be some layoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where can you go and make this kind of money? Well, it's very difficult. I mean, I would have never thought I could make doctor's salary with a high school diploma. And it's possible. Because the reason why they pay so well is because the profit margin is huge. It's a dangerous job, and you are exposing yourself to long-term health effects that they know and they cushion themselves against. One way to talk with oil and gas workers or just people in these plants in general is to I think get to the heart of the issue. You named it. We all want better for our kids. We all want to clean air and clean water. I don't think there's anybody who's like, please pollute my air and my water. Nobody's like that. And the way I was able to justify, the work to feel good about. I drove a hybrid to the refinery. I'm doing my part. We all can and we must do our part. But what needs to change is a system change. And part of that system change is no tolerance for continued build out of fossil fuel infrastructure at this point and this juncture. We know better. We cannot continue down that pathway, and we should accelerate, other ways, including the reduction in our consumption and things that are not very popular to say, but they are the reality. I mean, my friends are. We still get together, and every now and then we'll get into like a little debate about it because. like I said, people wear their job as their identity. I'm an operator. I'm an engineer. I justified working out there as we were fueling America. We were the sixth largest refinery in the country, and the gasoline and diesel and jet fuel that we made allowed for all of us to get around, and that's still true today. We owe a debt of gratitude to the people who are putting their lives on the line every day, and the shortening and the premature death that is connected to these jobs. We owe a debt of gratitude to these blue collar workers who are out there getting it done and trying to be safe. But to have these conversations with my friends, I think we've kind of turned a corner here where they understand that. I think we all understand. There's no switch to turn off. It's not going to be a button that we press and now we're on green, whatever. Like it's going to be a process. But what we don't need is any more of this. We don't need to continue down this pathway. And so when we say enough is enough, that means that what we have has sustained us, has the jobs, has the 20, 30-year longevity to continue us through a transition. We don't need to build more export facilities for natural gas. We don't need to do so many of these other things that are only in the interests of short-term profit makers and not in the long-term interest of a livable planet and the people who are there. And so, it is contentious. And we have a union. I was in the union at the refinery, and they were strong and they would fight for you, but they weren't fighting for sustainability. They were. We're also a right to work state, so the union strength is not quite what it could be in other places. One more thing, and I'll pass here, but it takes real conversation across all difference. I have. It's very difficult for me to talk to some of the government. We have police juries down here, our parish administrators, municipalities. It's hard to talk when we all dig into our own ideological trench, and we feel that we are so right. We have to come together. I don't believe for one second that what these companies have done in our area is even remotely enough. They are partners in education. They sponsor the schools. They sponsor the parks to the tune of half a peanut for the like the amount of money that they have been exempted and they have made on the backs and the lives of the people over the last 80 years in this place alone. I've said this many times and I will repeat it. The streets should be paved with gold. There should be not a single person suffering trying to find health care. There should be a lot of things different if that money wasn't siphoned into the pockets of some already stuffed pockets and they actually cared about the community. They wouldn't help coastal restoration by restoring 20 acres while 1,000 acres a day is lost. Like we cannot keep putting drops in an ocean when we need to divert the river or whatever the analogy that works for you. There needs to be a more focused on the human impacts of all of us in a community and not just the handful of workers and a few peanuts for to keep the PR. And I'm sure that the amount of money that they donate to nonprofits and parks and schools is a fraction of the PR budget that they would spend otherwise. So why not help the people out? I'll stop there. Thank you.
And I want to add for 2 seconds, if you don't mind, Gwendolyn. I just want to say real quick, like if it wasn't the work for me, and I don't know if you could attest to this, James and Gwendolyn, for me and my colleagues, I noticed mostly for sure, we didn't wake up saying, "Oh, we love oil." It was the money, because we're so the deindustrialization of this area. That was the only thing that was really paying like that. I just couldn't believe how much money we made. So if it was a sugar factory, so one thing I had to keep in mind when I would get angry with coworkers, like they're just defending their money. You know what I mean? The money, because it was nowhere else to make. That's why my friends are all around the country and the world right now. So they're just defending that. Yeah.
Gwen, I would like you to answer the question of like, what do environmental justice advocates need to know about labor? What does labor need to know about environmental justice advocates? But also, if you wouldn't mind, Julian Burnett put forward the question, since benefits and ills were not equally distributed, what would restorative justice look like for each of you? And procedurally, what would you do for new oil, gas, and LNG projects to protect the community? Julian works for Posigen, which is a solar company in Philadelphia.
I don't think that we need, I'm like James, we don't need any more LNG facilities. There's enough already there. I think we need to focus on, for one thing, someone was talking about like the CEOs and the board members of these companies. They're not going to admit to their faults. Even during that explosion, you know, they're going to do everything they can to try to cover it up and sweep it underneath the rug. To me, they own the city, they own the lawyers, they own the doctors, they buy out everyone. So it's no justice because the love of money, the greed is worth everything. And to me, even the lives of their own life, because they value money. It's just the greed of money that takes root. So I think the thing that needs to happen is that the people has to change. It has to be a movement where the people say, we're not taking it anymore. And we have to advocate and we have to let them know how we feel, starting with the city officials, because they couldn't do it without the city officials, the mayors and all of them, and then just sweep it across the board. Because by us steady dying, people, it's like an alarm. There's a funeral every week. Somebody's dying, 2 or 3 people dying every week. There's a death every week. You know, I'm even, looking at, how long I have, because not only that we dying every week, then you have children that's born and they dying young, just is death, and when you're surrounded by death and you understand where it's coming from, then it's in your blood, and that, you only have so much time to live, so you need to make the best of it. So I'm looking at the part whereas I don't know how much time that I have, but I have enough time whereas I need to sound the alarm to let them know what's going on. And by me talking to them and we walk in the same path, they understand what I'm saying because I meet them exactly where they're at. I talk about when we drank the water. We weren't using bottled water. We drank the water from the faucet. We drank the water from the water well. We had glass. We didn't use plastic. We had our own food. We didn't take it to nobody to process our meat and our food. We did it ourselves. And from time that things were just so clean and purified, to now it's so toxic. And you don't know what chemicals that are in there. And you have to beware of this and that because they got to pass through this here inspection and they injecting these chemicals. You killing the livelihood of the days when we would rely on our own raising our own farm, our own meat, cows, chickens, rabbits, going coon hunting and all that kind of stuff. That's almost extinct because they are killing everything. They are taking the land, they taking that away too. And they pausing them in spite of taking the land. So they are destroying everything that was pure. Even the trees, you look at the trees and the trees like they just dying. It could be summertime and they just turn brown. It's not normal. It's like it's a dying world.
Wow. Thank you, Gwen. I'm going to actually pose this question that just came in, especially to you, Bilal, but of course, Gwen and James added in. Someone from Philly Thrive, who we mentioned before, they're wondering if you have recommendations for how to start talking to union members about the health risks of working in a polluted site like on refinery land, we'd love to bring labor into our movement to win a full cleanup of the refinery land and make sure all of our communities never endure the sickness the refinery workers and the fence line workers had to endure. But
Mhm.
facing a lot of pushback from unions who are pro-development at any cost, despite the health impact on them. So yeah, if you could, how would you approach unions?
That's a good question. So one of the best ways, it's going to sound sort of ridiculous, but it's true. Um, it has to be like an unofficial way. I don't know how they've been approached, how Fully Thrive has approached the union. But yeah, like they're just unions. As a former steel worker, just regular people. Number one, we love food. So, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's how, like, certain contractors would come and try to get business. They'd be like, let me see your lunch credit card. Oh, yeah, come on in. You know what I'm saying? Like, that was one of the way. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it has to be like an informal way you see the similarities that we all have. Like, if you just approach them like, I just want to make sure you're safe when this is being built or whatever. You know what I'm saying? Just find an entry point somehow because number one, the one thing, and James and Gwendolyn can attest to this, safety that's all we talk about, our safety briefings. And so if you approach it in something that they would recognize, so make sure you're safe. You know what I mean? And I just know a good way to a union person is hard. I don't know about you, James and Gwendolyn, but it was food for us. You know what I mean? Our contract would come like, yeah, you got lunch? All right, yeah. That's all I cared about. That's all we cared about in my particular unit. So, but yeah, I think just finding some similarities, like you are concerned about safety, and that would ring a bell. That's a key word with union people. You know what I'm saying? And I think just find a way to get in and talk. Just find an opening, however you do that. But yeah, they're all about their job is just to maintain jobs and make sure their membership is safe. And so I can see their resistance, but there's some common things that we all have in common. You just have to find an opening somehow. You know what I mean? Even if it's getting like a former union person, you know what I'm saying? Because I know how to talk the lingo, or people like me. You know what I mean? I don't know how many people are actually actively, I've done a lot with Philly Thrive, but how many former union workers are working with Philly Thrive? But it's just I could speak the lingo, you know what I'm saying, and what connects with them. Yeah.
The law saying call him.
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Gwen, James, do y'all have anything to add to that question?
Food, that's the best way to get people together for sure. Get some good food.
Good food. All right. Gwen, anything to add there? Food?
Food.
Yeah. That's
Once
it.
you feed them, then they come. They got food that they coming.
All right. Well, I think so. We're at 7. Is there anything y'all wanted to say in closing? I didn't see any other questions to draw out, but definitely Tanya can come off mute and let us know if there are any that I didn't catch. But yeah, anything y'all wanted to say before we close here?
Yeah, I think there's a divide. I think people in the environmental movement's doing great work, like Philly Thrive and all the other groups around the country, all the stuff you're doing, James and Gwendolyn and everybody. But I think we're speaking, I'm pretty sure we're where the disconnect. Like we all want the same things, but it's just like how we get there. But it's things like this that there has to be a way because there's not, you know. I want to be too dramatic, but we don't know how much time we have left. I know, Gwendolyn, you talk about the changes where you live. You know what I mean? The same thing with you, James. You know what I mean? I was born in Mississippi, so I know, I'm hearing things from my family, like how it's different there. And there has to be a way we can connect. And I think it's through stuff like this, like former and current oil people with that background. You know what I'm saying? Because the first way in is just knowing how to speak that lingo and get into these, with these people. Once you get in, however you get in, like what I mean, we're all the same, but it has to be a way to speak the same language and just get on the same page. So I'm hoping, I'm doing this work. Maybe I won't see it in my lifetime, but I'm doing it for my kids. Because if I feel like I don't do anything, I just feel helpless. So that's
Yeah.
why I do this work. So I just thank you for this forum and this opportunity.
Closing thoughts from you, Gwen. I'm gonna come to you last, James.
I think that I piggyback off what he just said. We all have to come together and you have to understand that there are different cultures, different ways that you speak to people in different areas because of the way that the culture is in that area. But I feel like if we all come together, and that's one thing that I think where the power is at, when we come together as one, no matter what sex, no matter what race, no matter what size, no matter what religion, when we all come together as one, that's what the power is dynamic. And we could do that across the country. We could do it across the globe. They have to make a change because this is a global crisis. This is not a United States problem. This is a global crisis. And we see movies on TV, 2012, the other one I watched, 2008, all of this here, they telling us, they know that this is happening. You know, they warning us, they signed the alarm. The thing to it is that, are we heeding to the warning? What are we going to do about it? Thank you.
Amen. All right, James, bring us home.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. That message is the one that resonates. Every single one of us on this planet are here for such a short amount of time.
Yes.
And you know, we have only been using fossil fuels in this manner for a few generations. And the continued dependency on these is catastrophic for all of us. So what we need is for people to understand that the powers that be, the moneyed interests, it's not a conspiracy that we all are in the system and trying to make our cost of living, and some have plenty and some are barely making it by. The reality is all of us together, connected, with grace and forgiveness and understanding, and coming from a place of love for our neighbors and an appreciation of the preciousness of life, ours and others, is the only solution. This community is the solution, period. Community, actual, across difference, you know, community. And so what I'd like to say is we can and we will continue to push for people to love each other, and to support each other in whatever comes after the hurricane. You know who comes and who come and help put the tarp on the hole in my roof? It was my neighbor. You know, he happened to work for the regulatory government. It doesn't matter because we're all human and we all get this short amount of time, and we all want better for our children and their children and their children. And so united in love and in community is the solution. And yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, James and Gwen and Bilal. This has been like just an absolute pleasure to spend my night hearing you guys talk. And I just will continue to look for your wisdom in this fight. And you can definitely follow these folks, look at their bios, the organizations, for a better bayou. Gwen, remind me of the name of that they can follow. What's your organization called again?
Climate Conversation, Brazoria County.
Yes, ma'am. And then Bilal has a website that he puts up his films on there, so you can definitely keep an eye out on them. I will also remind everyone that we'll put information about the hearing, the DEP hearing coming up on February 18th. If folks want to speak, there's also an opportunity for comment. And we'll put out some information. Circle in Chester has given us some great insight into that we can share. And I will also encourage folks, if they're interested more in talking about the refinery and how that land is being remediated or not remediated, and the struggles that the people in that community are experiencing, definitely check out Philly Thrive. And so, yeah, in closing, thank you guys so much for your time. It's been an absolute delight.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.